Joining us right now on the phone is the man who exposed the Bigfoot hoax, Steve Kulls, private investigator and executive director of Squatchdetective.com.
The numbers of sightings, even if you take 99% of them and put them in the trash can, you turn around, you still have that 1% that can't be explained. Well, we need to explain it.
And then this thing walks across the road, makes a turn towards us.
All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature.
Went to look forward, and there was a big black thing, is all I can call it.
And the whole time, the whole thing was shadowing us, right behind us, right on the side of us.
I still see that damn thing to this day. It wasn't 20 feet from me.
You could see it standing from the moonlight in the tree line.
I was just scanning right to left, and it reminded me of like a gorilla.
Get somebody out here. Son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Welcome to Squatch-D TV, exploring the Bigfoot mystery each week with your hosts, veteran researcher, author, and TV personality, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, and from the Bigfoot Research Project of Kentucky, Chris Bennett. Sit back and buckle up as we bring you guests from around North America discussing the Bigfoot phenomena, but not without a few laughs, too. Here are your hosts, Steve and Chris.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to Squatch-D TV for today's date, February 26th, 2023. Excuse me one second. I'm your host, your guide, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, along with my co-host, Mr. Chris Bennett, right down there. Hello, Chris.
Steve, what's going on, man? Good to see you, bud.
It's good to see me, too.
A little pre-show drama there, but I'm glad we got it.
So if I sound differently today, I don't have a muting ability. If I do, I may have to just slide my input button down. So my mic took a crap just before
the show.
And so I'm going to be having to replace that probably tomorrow or sometime. So right now, I'm actually using my Zoom H2N to be the input feed for the video, which I just had a thought, why not just do that? But the input on my Yeti is crap. So, because I tried like 3 different cables and it was a no-go. So here we are. And unfortunately, it's going to pick up the little nuances that go on around here that you won't hear on the, you didn't hear on the other mic. So,
well, that's okay, Steve.
I'm just glad to hear
you. That's better than the alternative, of silence.
But I can still change my voice.
Anyway.
Oh, man.
That's not a porcupine, it's a juvenile Sasquatch.
Anyway, sorry, I had to do the CN voice there for a second. So anyway, let's do our roll call that we normally do. First in the house tonight, Uncle Bones 2. Hello, Uncle Bones. Grasshopper, and Chris. Angel Nolan, John Swan.
Angel. John.
Mr. Lee 3PO. Hello, Mr. Lee.
Lee 3PO.
And Joe Dryden. Hello, Joe.
Joe.
Daniel Weeks. Good to see you, sir.
Hi, Daniel.
Old Lady in the Woods.
Old Lady in the Woods. Welcome.
Absolutely. That's kind of attuned to what Chris is, the old man in the woods.
The old man that falls in the woods.
Kevin Harder, but I love his thing. Hello, hominins.
Kevin.
Going down. Eyes in the Woods. So we have Old Lady in the Woods. We have Eyes in the Woods. Hello.
All right.
Jay Fritz is in the house.
Jay. Hi, Jay.
The tall ones. Brent, what's going on?
Brent.
We already said we also said Grasshopper. He's in. We got Mark is in the house.
Mark.
Smedley Do Right. Kinderhook is beautiful. Yes,
Smedley.
I'm just trying to find some more. Sasquatch Wizard Adirondacks. Brian McMahon in the house. John Ayers. And that's all I can see for now. I may have
Kevin Harder.
Kevin Harder, yep.
Welcome, Kevin.
Oh, Helton, a.k.a. Faster Man, is here. DM Zabo. He must have skipped over a bunch here. I don't know. If I forgot anybody, I please forgive me. It's been one hectic evening.
Yeah. Prior to the show, everything was working great. And then all of a sudden, didn't work. Brian McMahon. Hey, Brian.
Par for the course.
John Ayers. John.
So, of course, tonight we're going to be talking all about the Kinderhook creature with our guest way down there, Mr. Bruce Hallenbeck. Welcome, sir.
Hi there, gentlemen. How are you?
Well,
good to see you.
Hanging in there.
Glad to have you.
We're surviving now.
That's good.
But anyway, before we do this, I just got a little minute, which I was going to show you, gentlemen, prior to the kerfuffle before the show. But I'm going to show it. It's about a minute video of yesterday's event at the Viaport in Rotterdam, New York. There was a little small Bigfoot convention that actually turned out to be a little bit bigger than they expected. And it's the first time in a while, I literally went into this room and it was like, oh my God, it's a packed house. I mean, it was packed. So here it is.
Okay.
Man, it was really a fun event. I gotta tell you.
That was cool.
Yeah,
was all that cheering after somebody asked if Chris was with you and you said no? Everybody, Bennett's not here. Hooray! Hooray!
No, that's all. That's when they heard I was going to have Bruce on the show tonight.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But anyway, welcome, Bruce. It's been a long time since we've talked Kinderhook creature here.
Yes, thank you.
And I think, and of course, we want to say that Bruce has written a truly remarkable book here called The Kinderhook Creature and Beyond. And it is quite a great read. It talks about some of the, not only about the Kinderhook creature, but some of the paranormal that goes on and some UFO stuff. So it's really a great book, just, showing the mystery that surrounds this little small hamlet in upstate New York. And if anybody's interested in picking up a copy of the book, it's going to be in the description below. The link is there. Check it out. So anyway, Bruce, give us a little synopsis of, first of where and what Kinderhook is, and a little bit about how this whole creature flap started back in the 80s.
Well, Kinderhook, as you say, it's a pretty small town. It's actually one of the oldest towns in New York. And Henry Hudson, when he sailed up the Hudson River, discovered it, basically. He named the area Children's Corner. And that's, in Dutch. That's Kinderhook. And really, ever since the 1700s or before, I suppose, Kinderhook has had kind of a strange reputation. There have been ghost sightings, there have been strange lights in the sky, there have been all kinds of things. partly because Kinderhook is pretty close to the Hudson River, and the Hudson River has always been known for strange happenings. But Kinderhook itself seems to be nestled in a little valley that has some unusual occurrences all its own. And of course, it was the home of Martin Van Buren, the 8th President of the U.S., who is now buried in Kinderhook. And cool. He supposedly haunts his home, Lindenwald, which is just down the road from where I live. And Washington Irving made his home here for a while and wrote parts of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow here. And he actually based the characters in The Legend of Sleepy Hollow on people who lived in Kinderhook. For example, Ichabod Crane was actually a school teacher named Jesse Merwin. Katrina Van Tassel was Katrina Van Allen, and so on. And so both Kinderhook and Sleepy Hollow, which is down in Westchester County, we both kind of claim that story. In fact, we've had a kind of a friendly feud over that for years and years as to which town has the rights to it. Well, we both do.
Yeah.
So, I think it all started with that sort of thing. And, in the last few decades, we have had reports of Sasquatch-type creatures, which ended up being dubbed the Kinderhook creature back in the early 80s. And that is a very long story, and I'm not sure where to begin on that, because back in the late 70s, there was an article in a magazine called the Hudson River Chronicle, which is since defunct, about Bigfoot sightings in the Hudson Valley. And I've always been interested in cryptozoology ever since I was a kid, but I was kind of skeptical when I first read that article. I thought, okay, I can accept it in the Pacific Northwest. I can accept the Yeti in the Himalayas. But in upstate New York, I don't know. It doesn't seem very likely. Well, that was before we started seeing things literally in our own backyard. I think the first thing that happened that was kind of strange was that my cousin, who was a bit of a hunter when he was a teenager, was in the woods behind my grandparents' house, which is where I grew up. And this was in the December, I think, of '78. And he found some strange tracks in the snow, and he, showed them to me. I took some pictures of them. He and I agreed that they didn't look like bear tracks. They looked more humanoid than bear-like. So I took those pictures and I sent them to the Hudson River Chronicle, who promptly lost them and then went out of business. And yeah, that was very frustrating. But a few months after that, my grandmother started noticing something was taking her trash bags from the back porch of the house, taking them down in the middle of the yard, untying them, and taking out the foodstuffs. Now, if it was a raccoon, it wouldn't untie the trash bag. It would tear it apart.
Yeah.
Or any animal.
Bear, same way.
Right. But this was very neat. And this happened several times. And at one point, she talked to her neighbor about it across the woods. And the neighbor said that she found one of her trash bags stuck up in a tree. Well, that was pretty strange. A short time after that, my grandmother, who used to get up really early in the morning, happened to be looking out her kitchen window one morning and saw something lying on the ground in the snow out in the yard, near where the trash bags had been taken. And she said it was very long and all curled up, almost in a fetal position. And she kind of rubbed her eyes, and the next time she looked out the window, it was gone. Now she didn't tell anybody about that at the time, which is too bad because there probably were tracks there. Sure. But she was afraid people would think that she was, getting a little squirrely in her old age.
That's a common theme. Yeah.
So I didn't find out about that until later. But in the interim, my cousin, once again, was trapping down in a swampland nearby called Cushing's Hill. And this was in the daytime, and he was down there in the swamp, and he experienced something very, very strange that scared him so much that he ran back to the house and told us the story, to my grandparents' house. He said that he was down there in the swamp and he heard this noise that was like a clacking and grunting sound. And he saw not one, not two, but three bipedal creatures crossing the creek in the swamp. And they were making these sounds as they went. He had a big wicker basket with him that he used to carry a baseball bat, I guess, to hit his prey or whatever. And he said that didn't make him feel very safe. So he went back to the house.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I would have done the same thing, yeah.
Right.
I can tell you, he was really afraid because his face was as white as a sheet, and he was just, and he was a 6-foot guy. I mean, he's not a little kid anymore, and he wasn't a little kid then. So
Bruce,
that's when my grandmother finally.
Did you describe them as being about the same size, or were there different sizes, like one really big one and one small one, or
same size?
Looks like the internet's playing a little trouble here.
Oh, I don't know if it's Bruce's or mine.
I think it's Bruce's a little bit.
Around.
Yeah, I think your internet connection's a little. Maybe it's a bandwidth issue, Bruce.
Incident to us,
There you go. No.
Sorry.
I think your internet connection may have cut out on you there for a second, but you're okay now.
Oh, there we go. When he described this to us, my grandmother finally fessed up and told us what she had seen, and the whole incidents with the garbage bags and everything. So that was kind of the start of our investigation, if you will. Although everything was kind of low key for a while after that, until the summer of 1980. This was. I had a friend visiting from England, and I was taking her home one evening. She was at our house having dinner, and then I took her to where she was staying. But as we walked out the door of the house, my grandparents' house once again, the security light came on the porch. And at that moment, this sound came from the woods, which was unlike anything I'd ever heard. It started out like a shriek or a scream, turned into a series of guttural sounds, and then kind of died out in a low moan. And my friend from England turned to me and said, "Is that a typical American sound to hear at night?" And I said, "Nope, I never heard that one before." And it was dark. I was not prepared to go down in the woods and chase this thing in the dark. Right. So I didn't that night. I wish I had been brave enough. But anyway, it was a couple of months later that we had our big encounter. September 24th, 1980, a date I will never forget. I was with some friends in Chatham, which is about 6 miles from Kinderhook, that evening. And I do remember it was a incredible full moon night. I mean, the moon looked like the size of a basketball in the sky. And there were all kinds of owls and, dogs barking, and it was just as if something strange was about. And I got a call from my grandmother at the restaurant where, I was with my friends. And I thought, well, that's pretty strange. She doesn't usually call me when I'm out. Yeah. And she said, there's something outside making a terrible noise, and I wish you would come home. And okay. So, I bid goodbye to my friends, and I came home. But by the time I got home, I missed all the excitement. Turns out what happened was my grandmother had been visiting my aunt, who lived up in the village, and my aunt had brought her home. And just as my grandmother got out of the car, she heard this horrible sound coming from around the side of the house that she described as like someone in terrible agony, like a, awful, painful sound. And, in the great moonlight of that night, she could see a shadow of something that was around the corner of a shed out back. And she described it as having very long arms and kind of a pointed head almost. My aunt was so petrified by this whole thing that she told my grandmother, "Get back in the car, Mom." And as soon as she said that, she locked all the doors before my grandmother could get back in the car. She just totally panicked.
Oh, no.
So what happened was she went home. My grandmother went in the house because she wanted to stay there. My aunt went home to get my cousin again, who had a shotgun. So meanwhile, my grandmother was sitting in the house in the living room with a hammer in her hands, just, ready in case something peeked in the window.
Oh, don't mess with Grandma.
Oh, yeah, she was tough. And, yep. And when my cousin got there, he got up on the porch with his shotgun, and at first he shot it off in the air just to scare the thing away. And there was no reaction at all from the thing. The second time he shot it off, he said flame came out of the barrel, and the thing screamed and ran away. And that was the excitement that I missed. So, obviously when I got home, everybody was kind of like walking around like, whoa, I can't believe this happened, but it did.
Oh, man.
Well, my mother, my parents, I should clarify, my parents live about an eighth of a mile away, so it's like, the Hallenbeck compound. And they had heard, some of the goings on, and they certainly heard the gunshots. So my mother ended up writing a letter to the Albany Times-Union newspaper, which was the biggest newspaper around. And there was a section in there called, I don't remember the name of it actually, but it was written by Barney Fowler. It was an outdoors column, sportsman column. And he published a letter, and all the incidents that were described to her. So after he published the letter, there were scores of letters that were sent to him by other people who had experienced the same thing in Columbia County. And it got to a point where he was so he finally said, "Okay, we got to stop this. I can't handle this anymore. We have to go on to other topics." But people wrote in about various vocalizations they'd heard. They wrote in about sightings. It was amazing how many people had experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
So at that point, I really began to investigate this seriously and interviewed some people who had some very good sightings. There was a woman who was driving home from Albany one night from work, and she lived in Columbia County. And just as she got to the county line, she saw this creature in her headlights that she described as having reddish-brown hair or fur. She said 7 to 8 feet tall, that it was swinging its arms very, very gracefully as it walked across the road. And it walked into a cornfield and just kind of, disappeared into the darkness. That was one of our best visual sightings. Another one was a couple of years after that. There was a gentleman who was fishing near a dam that was across the Kinderhook Creek, and this was in the daytime. And he looked across the creek, and he saw this creature looking at him. He said it was standing on the other side of the creek, just staring at him. And he described it, the same way, as a very tall, reddish-brown hair, but he had such a good look at it. It was such a sunny day. He said he could see that the fingernails were black. I thought that was a really good description. And then he said it just turned and walked off into the woods. So, we had so many of these sightings that finally a TV crew came here in 1981 to investigate it and to talk about it on television. It was a show called PM Magazine, which was on in the 80s, and it was kind of a syndicated show. And the gentleman who was the host of the show, Alan Taffel, came down, and he spent a couple of days here. And they taped my grandmother and my cousin and, all the people who had this experience, including one of our neighbors who had also had some vocalization experiences and a couple of sightings. And so we were all on tape on that show. And as a result of that show, I think, there was another gentleman who was hunting at the Kleinkill Bridge, which is a bridge that spans over the Kleinkill Creek, and that's just outside of Kinderhook. And he found some tracks, which he showed me in the creek bed, and they weren't huge tracks. They were about 14 inches or so, but strangely shaped, humanoid. And so I made some casts of them, sent them to the State Museum. They were looked at by a physical anthropologist and a paleontologist, and they both agreed that they were humanoid, but they couldn't say for sure if they were human tracks, which I thought was very interesting. So, that's kind of the gist of what happened in the early 80s. I mean, there were, many more occurrences, but those were some of the best ones that we have on record.
Well, I think if I remember right, Bruce, they did. Somebody had reported seeing some eye shine a time or two back then.
Right. Yeah. Actually, not just my cousin in this case, but my father also saw red eyes out in his cornfield, which he actually chased after. With his gun. He just he never got a good look at it, and he never got close to it, but he saw the eyes 6 or 7 feet off the ground. Yeah, and they were always red shiny eyes. So
now,
yeah.
I've got a couple of things that first of all, with the whole kerfuffle earlier, I just wanted to make mention that Bruce is one of 4 people that are responsible for me getting into Bigfoot research. I don't know if you realize that, Bruce.
It
was reading Monsters of the Northwoods that got me into saying, this is in New York, I want to research this.
Oh, wow.
And that's what got me into this whole foray for the last 25 years. So, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's funny how old were you then when you read the book? Were you like a kid then?
No, I was 28, 29.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was a kid. 28, 29.
I would consider myself a kid then. But I read a book called The Maybe Monsters by Gardner Soule when I was 11. It was in our school library. And that's what got me hooked. It was, all about the, not just Sasquatch, but Loch Ness Monster and all those things. So, yeah, I've been hooked on it most of my life. So never thought I would find it in my own backyard, though.
Yeah, isn't that weird? Who would have thought, when I got into this 25 years, who would have thought that I would have met with the exception of Bob Bartholomew, who's in, I think, New Zealand. I've met all the authors and hung out with them and had talks with them and had discussions with them. And then, years later meet, Bob Gimlin and Jeff Meldrum. And, it's just... So here's the interesting thing I got to say is there must have been a lot of people in Kinderhook seeing things, because just in casual conversation, I remember this goes back maybe 20 years ago, maybe 18, 19 years ago, to be more specific. But I remember visiting some friends, and they realized, oh, you investigate Bigfoot stuff. Well, my dad, he saw something, running out of his driveway. He pulled into his driveway, and here's this big, tall, shadowy figure, and as soon as the lights hit the driveway, it took off into the woods. And he says, no, it was on 2 feet. It was very tall, with blah, blah, blah. Where's he live? Kinderhook.
Ah.
And many years later, I met, and he's been on this show before to talk about it, was Jack Kenna, who was on a few of the paranormal programs, because he's a big-time ghost investigator. And we were talking one day, and he was like, yeah, he goes, years ago, and I know that, where Rensselaer County and Columbia County meet, where that one woman had her sighting. Yeah. That's Valatia.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, yeah, I was fishing, in the Kinderhook Creek in Valatia, and I'm just standing there, and all of a sudden this thing comes out of the woods, takes one look at me, turns around and walks back into the woodline. And he goes, I just got my stuff and got out of there. And
I wonder if that's... what was his name? Oh,
Jack.
Different guy?
Yeah, his name is Jack. He never told anybody.
Huh.
And his name is Jack Kenna. And I go, that one happened to have been in the 80s, would it? And he's like, well, yeah. I go, well, you knew what you saw. And it was so funny because he wanted to deny actually seeing a Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And, it wasn't until that really hit him that, well, look here. Look at some of my files. This is all Kinderhook creature stuff back from the 80s. And he was like, oh, my God. Yeah, couldn't realize it.
It's amazing how many people experienced it back then. I mean, from 1980 through about 83, there were sightings frequently by people from all walks of life down here. And I still, to this day, I'm still getting reports from people. It's interesting that people won't talk about it unless somebody else does, and then they'll think it's okay, and then they'll talk about it.
Right.
Right. That seems to happen a lot, and I'm just getting reports now from like 1983 from people, and it's amazing how many experienced it. So I keep wishing it would come back, but I think it was a time, and then there wasn't a time. It was like as we were saying, as Chris and I were saying before the show. Paul Bartholomew and I are good friends, and we go back and forth. He's got his amazing sightings in Whitehall, and we've had ours down here. It does seem like the sightings have died down in both areas to a certain extent. In Kinderhook to a great extent, I'd say. But on the other hand, Dutchess County, which is just below Columbia County, is having a lot of sightings now. And I can't help but wonder if maybe these creatures have migrated south. In part, I think, because Columbia County is becoming so built up, and many of the woods are being slashed down, which is a shame. But many reports from Dutchess County these days.
We do have a question in the chat I want to get to. It was addressed to me, Steve. Kinderhook seems to have a straight shot north via remote tracks in the western Mass. Do you know if this area has a record of sightings all the way up to Whitehall? The answer to that is yes. I just took a report out of Averill Park, New York, which is very close to the Columbia County border in Rensselaer County, just last winter. And actually it was a utility worker who, with him and his buddy, were out working, and they had a very strange occurrence out there. But I've investigated sightings in Petersburg, New York, which is, again, Rensselaer County, getting close to that Vermont, not too far. I mean, it's a community or two over from Columbia County. That would be Berlin and I think Stephentown, and then into Columbia County. Or maybe Stephentown is more towards Massachusetts. But But yeah, and then you go north, Cambridge, Salem, all in those areas. There's been sightings up Route 22 for many years.
Yeah.
So that whole area, yes, there is some sightings there. There are some sightings that go more to the east towards Vermont, to the east towards Massachusetts. October Mountain, which is pretty close to the New York State border in that area. Sighting reports come from there. And most recently, there was a Bigfoot sighting in the Pittstown State Forest, which is just on the other side of Petersburg. So maybe some of them also have kind of migrated or moved over towards the Rensselaer County side as well.
Well, and I just learned today, I was looking on the map because I'm not a local in New York, of course, and I was looking on the map to find out where Kinderhook is. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then, la-di-da, there's Whitehall just, right up the road. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's, I think I thought it's around 100 miles or so, but Bruce was telling me it's roughly maybe 80, so it's maybe around less than 100 miles away from Whitehall. So that seems like a perfectly logical distance. Something that's got long legs, could be and lives in the wild, could easily be moving back and forth, through the area.
And to answer Am and Chris, a lot of those questions, have I been able to identify individuals from sighting reports? I don't know if you mean individual creatures or individual witnesses, but those witnesses have told me face to face. So those are from my files that I know of these sightings that have occurred here, here, and here. So.
Well, that's fascinating. And I know there have been sightings like around Lake George, all the way up to the Adirondacks. I still get occasional reports from down here, but not really sightings so much as vocalizations, which sometimes can be taken the wrong way, and it might be something else. But I know that what I heard in 1980 was nothing I'd ever heard before or since, really. We did hear something in 1988 that we recorded, and we sent the tape to Cornell University, where they have a place called the Library of Animal Sounds, and they have all these vocalizations of various North American mammals. And they wrote back to us, and I still have the letter, saying that we believe this animal is not native to North America. We don't know what it is, which I thought was a pretty neat letter. So, it's fascinating what has happened down here, and I just wish it would show up again, because I'm ready for it this time. I wasn't ready for it then.
Now, your background, you were a journalist, were you not?
Yeah.
Yep.
I still am to a certain extent. I write magazine articles, and I've written a number of books. And I write books not just about cryptozoology, but also about film, which is my other hobby.
Nice.
But, with a background in journalism, I try to approach this in a scientific way. And I, as in the book, I say, I don't know for sure what these things are. I just give you the reports, I tell you what the witnesses said, and the rest is up to you. I don't have any particular theories I'm trying to advance. I personally, I lean toward, the biological animal theory. On the other hand, I've had some experiences that I can't explain in that way. So I just have a very open mind on this.
Yeah. If anything, I have learned both from actually you and Bill Brand and Paul is really how to document sightings. Like when you get a witness, you key in on certain things, and you look for the credibility factor, and that is something that I am humbly very ingratiated to you guys for teaching me. And it's just the way that's why when you were describing some of these sighting reports, the hair was raising on my arms, because you guys document this stuff the best. So I got to say that.
Well, we try. Thank you. I'm really glad you wrote that book about the hoax because, we need to have a little more honest, open-minded skepticism in this field, I think.
Yep.
You can't go off in the woods and every time a branch cracks, you say, "Oh, that's a Sasquatch." No, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. I mean, I've lived near the woods my whole life, and I still do. In fact, I'm talking to you now from my grandparents' old house, which I inherited. So this was the scene of the crime. But
that's the one where Grandma was waiting with the hammer inside.
This very room, yes.
Oh,
that's
cool.
Right.
All right, Mark, cue the Sasquatch.
Yeah, I wish we could.
Oh man.
But I've been around the woods my whole life, and I can tell you that there's things that are normal that you expect, and then there are things that just are not. And this was not. Yeah. I mean, it's nothing I can explain in any other way except to say it's an unknown thing.
Well, I think that's a lot of it too, Bruce, because a lot of the guys that were kind of raised in the country, we raised up, we went out in the woods, we hunted, we took our 22 rifles. If nothing else, we'd shoot cans or something. But spend enough time out in the woods while you're young, you automatically kind of know what animals are in the area and what sounds like what. And then you hear something that's completely, way out of left field. What was that?
Yep. Yeah.
It kind of makes you wonder.
By the way, go ahead.
I just want to say, Raptor Crazy says, I apologize. This gentleman been on other YouTube channels. The stories sound really familiar, but recently you've been featured on Small Town Monsters,
right?
With Seth Breedlove, and maybe that's where some of these stories are coming from too.
Probably, yeah. In fact, it was because of Small Town Monsters that I ended up writing this book, because this was one of the first publications by Small Town Monsters. Actually, Seth Breedlove asked me to write this book, and I was more than happy to. I think it's probably the closest I'll ever get to writing an autobiography. It certainly, details my experiences from when I was a child to now, of things that I can't explain, things that just don't fit into normal logic. And it's almost embarrassing. I mean, so many things have happened, not just to me, but to people I know, that my skepticism has been pretty much eroded over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, I still try to maintain a healthy skepticism, and the credibility factor, yes, is very important, absolutely. But sometimes it's just the sheer weight of all these sightings just kind of weighs me down.
Well, when I started getting into this, my first reaction was, I wonder if these people that they're interviewing are really telling the truth. I don't know. And I was, being a professional investigator, I was like, I want to go find out. And then after talking to some of them, like talking to Brian Goslin, and talking to Dan Gordon, and talking to John Weitzel, and unfortunately 2 of the 3 are gone. I realized that, hey, there is something to this. They're not just seeing, this is all legit stuff, and you start looking at the fine details, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put you on the spot here, and it's kind of off topic.
I say we would do that.
This is a humor. This is a humorous way. In your opinion, what do you think the best movie ever made was?
The best movie ever made?
Yeah.
Period?
Yeah.
Of any kind. That would be impossible.
And the reason why I asked this is because you were your thing is movies, and that's what
it is.
Wrote.
Yeah. Best movie ever made, I couldn't possibly tell you. I mean, they'd have to fall into categories.
Worst movie, maybe?
I'll tell you what the best movie ever made about the Yeti is. It's The Abominable Snowman, made in 1957. Starring Peter Cushing and Forrest Tucker.
Good one.
It's not only the best movie ever made about the Yeti, it's the most accurate movie ever made about it, because the writer, Nigel Neal, based a lot of the movie on actual sightings by explorers like Eric Shipton and so on in the 1950s. And it's just a very intelligent movie. It doesn't take the usual easy way out. It's, the Yeti is considered a creature of high intelligence rather than a lumbering monster. It's a very fascinating movie. So
Totally agree. It's better than 95% of the new Bigfoot movies,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any that even comes close that I can think of. So yeah, but as far as the best movie ever made, I don't know. I don't know what that would be. It could be could be Seven Samurai, the Kurosawa film. Could be. A lot of people say Citizen Kane. A lot of people say Vertigo. They're all up there, but
I for some reason after I put on Citizen Kane, he'd say Rosebud, and 5 minutes later.
Well, not for every taste, I guess, but I'm fond of all those movies, and they all be in my top 20 or whatever, but I couldn't tell you what the best movie ever made is, because I don't know that there is one. I mean, there's
a lot of good.
There's so many different kinds.
I wanted to ask something just off kilter, off key,
yes.
just to have a little fun. Always fun. And you know what? Yeah. You did the right thing. You brought it right back.
Well, there's
to the
got
Sasquatch.
to be there's got to be different categories, Steve. It just can't be. What's the best movie you ever saw? Well, I don't know. It's been
I've done a lot of
science fiction.
I've done a lot of these interviews, so I'm a professional. What can I tell you?
Oh, goodness gracious. So there was a time, and I always found this interesting, and this comes from the Monsters of the Northwoods, is where you were putting food out to see what would get snatched off. You remove the bird feeder off the post, and then you would put different foods out there. Can you elaborate on that for the group?
Yeah, that was one of the many things we tried back in the early 80s to get this thing to come to us. We left out all kinds of different stuff from various kinds of meat like steak and leftovers, not whole steaks. Pizza. I mean, we tried everything, and a lot of times the food was taken, and a lot of times you could tell it was taken by animals. Once or twice, it just kind of disappeared completely, and there's no saying what that was. But we did try putting flour around the post where we were leaving the food to see if anything left tracks.
Yeah.
But we never got any tracks, unfortunately.
And
we tried everything in those days. And by the way, I should point out that it was PM Magazine, the TV show, that dubbed the Kinderhook creature. They came up with the name, and that's what their segment was called. So that just kind of stuck. And so I guess I should thank PM Magazine for my book.
I remember specifically you saying that, if it was out there, it particularly did not like the Italian fare of pizza. Because the box was found, and they're like...
Yeah, there was something, we found some scratches on the pizza box, not fingernails, but claw scratches. And whatever opened the box didn't seem to go for it. And we didn't have anchovies on it or anything. It was, you'd think they would have taken it. No pineapples, none of that.
I'm not crazy about anchovies either.
Yes, you really want to offend somebody, call into a pizza joint. What would you like on it? Can I get pineapple and anchovies, please?
Yeah. Oh, man. Probably throw it at you.
Well, New York is just loaded up with waterways and stuff. I mean, you can't... I don't think you could throw a rock without hitting a river or stream somewhere by looking at the map. So they've got plenty of good places to travel and plenty of places to get water.
Yeah, we felt that these things would go along the waterways. There was an investigator named Dr. Warren Cook who looked into the Whitehall sightings, and he also came down here to Kinderhook and came to the conclusion that there might have been a breeding colony of these things down here, because we had a number of multiple sightings down this way. Like my cousin who saw the 3 of them, and then a couple of times there were up to, I think, 5 that were seen at the same time. So he had the theory, Dr. Cook, that they may have wandered down by the Hudson River down to the Kinderhook Creek, which is a tributary of the Hudson River, and point south, and that maybe they had their little breeding colony here. So I don't know. Could be.
Certainly does sound for a while. For a while, they were just really enjoying that particular area. I don't know if and traditionally the weather is a little bit milder than it is in Whitehall.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Because Whitehall's it's in the foothills of the Adirondacks, and they get more snow than we do, and it gets a little colder up there, yeah.
Because even from where I live now to, say, Albany, and I live in southern Washington County, and Whitehall is in northern Washington County, it's a couple of degrees difference.
Yeah.
And, if you don't think, and for those who live in the more southern zones and people that live in the more moderate zones like the West Coast, a couple of degrees, even 3-4 degrees, makes a huge difference, because it could be 36 in Kinderhook, and it can be 31 degrees in, Greenwich, New York, which is where I live. And that means I'm getting snow, they're getting rain.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a huge difference.
Yeah. So, and it's very possible, I suppose, that the ones that were here in Kinderhook have now, some of them, maybe migrated to Dutchess County. There have been so many sightings in Dutchess County in the last few years, it's pretty amazing. Who knows? Again, I don't profess to know the answers to these questions, but I like to ask the questions.
Yeah, and
I think an area like that had that many sightings that were really close together, I think it's got to be a family group, surely.
It seems so.
I guess, what would you call them? A colony of Bigfoot? A family group? Or I don't know even what you call them.
A gaggle?
Maybe?
A troop of Bigfoot.
Well, maybe.
I've heard people call them pods, and I kind of chuckle at that one.
Pod.
They call groups of crows murders, so, hey, who knows?
Murder of crows.
A murder of Bigfoot.
Sounds like a crime, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A gaggle of Bigfoot.
Yeah, I like the gaggle.
A clan. No, that sounds pretty good. Blue Ridge Bigfoot's got a clan.
Yeah. It's got a ring to it.
Yeah.
Well, that also would
I tried that too.
I don't like using the word clan necessarily, because that would establish some sort of political affiliation.
That's true.
And that's why.
Well, surely they're not that type of Bigfoot in the world. Surely.
That would be Big Uts, not Bigfoot.
I find. I find, and I've been really studying up on Homo sapien evolution, and for people, and this is my own opinion, but it's based somewhat in evolution, that people who were attributing a lot of human characteristics to a Sasquatch, like people saying, oh, they're in clans, they have their own language, and and then you have the folks that say, oh, geez, well, they're just like us. They just have adapted to the, to the forest, and they shun technology, and that makes, if you look at evolution, and if that was the case, if they are us, then why would they have skipped? How many different revolutions to the years have we had? We had the agricultural, we had the knowledge revolution, we had the, the intellectual revolution, we've had the industrial revolution, we've had, the political revolution. So we've had all these different evolutionary bumps throughout history. And the funny thing is that when we, and I always find this fascinating, is that when we hit the intellectual revolution, that's where we started using tools. we had a pretty easy life. And then when the agricultural revolution hit, we started working more, which is kind of funny. But then, and the one thing that separated us from, say, Neanderthals or, Homo florensis or Heidelbergensis and the Denisovans was the fact that we could use imagination. Like all of the different hominids and the humans or the Homo genus could use, what should I say? Could use abstract thought and planning and pre-planning. Yeah. But as Homo sapiens, we were the only ones that used our imagination, and we created a lot of things out of our imagination. For example, government. I mean, government is not something that is you can feel it, touch it, breathe it. It's reality, but it is fiction. If you think about it, it's something we created. Currency, the same thing. Yeah, you can touch money, but its value is something we created using imagination. And this is something that, no other creature on this planet has ever been able to do except Homo sapiens. So that's why I kind of reject the argument that Sasquatch is a Homo sapien, because they don't have that imagination. Otherwise, you would see political developments. You would see them using stuff more than just simple tools like a stick or a rock to, as if you believe some of the reports where people have said, "Oh, I saw them tree knocking," or "I saw them holding a stick," or we know we know from experiences they throw rocks. So,
well, I think if they ever got to where they were carrying spears, I wouldn't go in the woods no more.
Yeah, that's
stay home.
And that's the other huge thing too, is that during the very first jump, where Homo sapiens were just hunter-gatherers, one would expect that's the level of where if a Sasquatch, so let's just say a Sasquatch is a Homo sapien that wants to shun all this other stuff, one would think that they would use tools such as a spear or a rock sharpened to cut things, but that's never been reported, a Sasquatch carrying a spear. And if it has, it's been it's a one-off, and usually when you have a one-off in thousands of sightings, it's probably an anomaly or something incorrect. So, that to me, it would make no sense why they are, they're definitely not a Homo sapien. Now, could they be a Homo something or other? Absolutely possible.
Yeah, it seems to me, my romantic theory, if you will, is that it's a descendant of Gigantopithecus. That somehow Gigantopithecus evolved into this upright, bipedal sort of between ape and human. And that's one of the things you were talking about, what Homo sapiens has wrought with its imagination. One of the downsides of that is war, and violence. Bigfoot creatures have never been known to be particularly violent. And one of the ideas in the Abominable Snowman movie I was talking about earlier that I love is that the Yeti is superior intellectually to mankind, and they're just waiting around for us to kill each other off so they can take over. and that's, it certainly seems like we do a pretty good job of that, unfortunately. So,
but man, and it's kind of funny because if you go back, even when we were in that first stage, the knowledge revolution or intellectual revolution, whatever you want to call it, we were destructive back then. That we would go into an area, and within that area, 60 to 70% of the known animals there, we killed off.
Yeah.
For food, not because of sport, but because of food. And how much early man was also known to burn down forests.
Oh yeah.
So they could see the prey and create grasslands in lieu of forests, so they could hunt those grasslands. Just fascinating stuff I've been learning about that, and the fact that when we went to the agricultural revolution, which was the next step, things became a lot harder, and we actually became a slave to the crops rather than the crops becoming slaves to us, because where we used to just go out and hunt and gather and come back to camp and then socialize, man started to, okay, now we have to tend to the crop. We have to prepare the soil. We have to plant seed. We have to water that. We have to nurture the plants. We have to harvest them. We have to, but what did happen was it created a population explosion.
Right.
When we start over, so, and then because of that population explosion, you have to create more crops. So it was just very fascinating. And this book I am reading is just really spot on, and it just opens the doors to so many thoughts. But I always kind of look at these books in the sense of how does it relate to a Sasquatch, and what could it mean for a Sasquatch? It's like when I did my primate behavior studies, I looked at how primates behave. Not just humans, but all the primates, conversely, because we don't know if a Sasquatch is, part of the human gang or part of the Pongid gang. We don't know. So I've also heard, and Cliff Barrickman has come up with an idea that perhaps the Sasquatch is a evolutionary product of Paranthropus, which also seems to kind of fit into the and Paranthropus obviously was more of the human type of hair-covered creature than it was the Gigantopithecus, which is more of a Pongid type of creature. But I have to admit, it's really difficult for me, who has seen a couple of them, to sit there and say they're human, because none of them appeared to be human-like to me. They acted very animal-like, but with that primate type of curiosity, obviously. So I don't know. I can't say for sure.
Where was it you had your sightings, Steve?
I had them both in the Adirondack Mountains in Washington County, on the east side of Lake George. So that should give you a good idea. Yep, right in that area, just southwest of Whitehall, by about 8 to 12 miles. So,
that fits.
And of course, if you haven't heard, the first year I had a team out there because we were going after some sightings. John Weitzel had a sighting there in 2000. And and over the years, there were several other sightings by people who were either hiking, staying, or camping out in that area. So I had a team out there, and we were out. We were hearing strange things throughout the night, like things following us or walking along with us. And then we'd get a turn our attention, and they would kind of recede further into the wood lines. And then after about 20 minutes or so, it would come back. And so we all got everybody into the camp, and it's okay, time for a break. Let's debrief a little bit and go for round 2. Let's get something to eat, get warmed up, get some coffee. And okay, so we got the fire going, everybody's talking. I decided, let me go get some batteries, and before you know it, I shine a flashlight down. I'm figured I'd have a smoke while I'm out there, shine a flashlight down because it's really quiet. And when I'm out in the woods, I love the quiet. So it's like, okay, it's nice and quiet out here at this point because everybody was being loud and funny over there. And I shine my flashlight down the north side, which is a downhill part of the dirt road, and I spin around and shine it to the north side. And there's one 8 foot tall standing right next to the utility pole. And what I think it was doing was, it was October, so all the leaves have dropped, and I think it's just sitting there watching the fire and watching our crew there. And we had just gained its attention and curiosity. I think it was just a surprise to see me put a flashlight on it than me seeing it being there. I think, whoa. I was so busy paying attention to what's going on over here, I didn't realize this guy quietly walked out to his car.
And what color was its hair?
Well, I couldn't really see. I got a very big silhouette. That one was kind of about 100 or so feet away. But I could see the eye shine coming back at me, and it was blinking. And then it simply just kind of turned. When I shook my light, it kind of just turned and walked in, sauntered back into the wood line. But I would say, it looked, from what I could see, it looked black. My second one was a very fleeting one at best, but it was really clear. And what had happened was, again, same area. We were shooting for NatGeo at the time, and they had come out and did some daytime interviews because we were like, listen, we traveled 10 hours to get here because we came from Chautauqua Lake Conference all the way out here. And I had some folks from Ohio and a guy from Georgia with us, and we were all going to be part of this. And I about 1:30 in the morning, a nature calls, so I unzip my tent, get out of my tent. I look over to the left to where the road is again, and between me and the road, here's this 5.5 foot brownish red one just take off. Gone. And my first reaction was like, no, couldn't be. But then the next morning, other people were reporting some strange events, and I came to the realization that I wasn't my imagination or anything like that. I really saw what I had seen.
Yeah, reddish brown is the coloration I always hear.
It was so clear, and it was long haired, and but the amazing thing was it wasn't tall. It was only like 5.5 feet.
Yeah,
and it booked. It just, it ran so fast. And my first reaction was like, what? No, I'm just going to use the tree and I'm going to go back to bed. I was exhausted. But because like I said, we had driven, between, almost 10 hours between stops and everything, and getting up, getting packed up from a conference and loading the car up, and then, driving all the way from, it's a 5-hour drive just from Chautauqua Lake to the Albany area, and then it's another hour and a half, and then we had to collect all this birch because it was raining out all day long. So we collecting birch, trying to get some semblance, set the camp up, and the NatGeo wanted to come in and interview us, and we were like, ugh, we were beat. And it was just, so to make the story more interesting, the next morning I get up, and one of the guy from Georgia had kept his pillow and blanket in his Jeep because it had been raining out. And he says, just in case my tent has a leak, I'm going to just keep my pillow and blanket in there. Before I go to bed, I'll make sure it's all dry in there, and I'll get my pillow and blanket, bring it in. Because if it's leaking, it's a new tent. If it's leaking, I'm just going to sleep in my car, and I got the dry pillow and blanket. Or I'm going to sleep in my Jeep. So the next morning, all of a sudden I hear, Steve. Now I went to my car last night about 11 o'clock, and I got my pillow and blanket. Look behind my Jeep now, and behind his Jeep there was a birch log, and he would have had to have moved that to open his Jeep up. So we're like, what the hell put that there? Because there was nobody there. And why would they have put that there? So it just made no sense. And then that night, something smacked the hood of one of the cars. And then the following day, the couple from Ohio actually found a track in the area where I had seen it running. And it was 9 inches long by about 4 inches wide. So it was really a wide foot, but it wasn't as true. Of course, it was a 5.5 foot Sasquatch. So it was a 9-inch track. Yeah. And they cast it, and they wanted to give it to me, but I said, no, you found it, you cast it, it's yours. So yeah, really quite the events. And we had Jeff on, I think, a while ago, Chris, and he talked about the strange events because of night. Good job successfully muting out before.
I hope I muted that out. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, the coughs catch me off guard every now and then, but I can catch a sneeze coming. I know.
So yeah, it was a very fascinating time, and after that, the year after, things started to curtail off. I mean, but from 2010 to 2011, 2012, the activity was really off the chain. I think early 2013, I had the crew out there, including my son, and I went out with one guy, and we could hear something paralleling us on one side and the other side of the road. And we turn back, and we go up and go, watch this. I go to my son, who, mind you, my son now is a New York State Forest Ranger over in Rensselaer County. And I said, Steve, why don't you and Spence take a walk down the road? So off they go, and they come back. Strangest thing happened. Yeah, what's that? Yeah, something kept following us on both sides of the road. So, and that is just not normal animal behavior to do that.
Yeah.
So,
That's interesting because the fateful day of September 24th, 1980, I felt during the day as I was walking around the area roughly where we live, around a golf course in Malaysia, and there's a lot of woods there. I felt there was something following me in the woods, that almost every time I took a step, it would take a step. And it was a creepy feeling. And I even wrote about it in my diary. I kept a daily diary in those days. And that evening, before I went out with my friends in Chatham, another friend was visiting me, and we decided to take a walk around the golf course. I told him I'd felt kind of creepy that day. So we walked around the golf course, and we were making fun of the whole idea of, the creature. We were saying, okay, Yeti, we called it the Yeti, come on out, put up your dukes, we're ready for you. And the full moon was just rising, and it was just a weird evening, and we walked around the golf course. All we heard was owls and dogs and things like that, but that whole day was weird, and I felt there was something strange watching us, and I think maybe that's why it came to the house that night, was because it had its eye on us for whatever reason. It was creepy.
I mean, I agree. I mean, if you think about the whole thing, we were collecting birch that day because it had been raining, and it was a birch log that had been left behind Jeff's Jeep, which made it really interesting. Had been watching us all day collecting specifically birch, and then it decided, and we found where it picked it out of. It picked it out of this muck and nothing. I wouldn't step in that. I'd soak my boot.
Yeah.
But something walked in there and went, picked it up, and it must have sounded like you step your foot in mud and pick it up. And you get that little suction, little. Yeah. I mean, that's what it would have been. Hooked the log up and threw it behind his Jeep, and that was that. Mm-hmm. So we do have a question directed at me from the chat. This is from John D. Brand, Pictum. Welcome to the show, Sean. Squad, do you think most likely the Bigfoot to be an ape or other? Not sure I can tell you. It's a primate, but that can mean it could be a human type of primate, or evolved from a human primate. Or it could be a pongid, which comes from the apes, or it could be something in between. I'm not sure, but I am positive it's a primate. Just not sure where in the lineage of primates it comes from. So that's my most honest answer I can get there. So.
Bruce,
go ahead.
The forest area around the plants and stuff in your area, are there a lot of berries? Berry bushes and stuff at certain times of the year?
Yeah, in fact, right here on my grandparents' property, well, it's my property now, there are raspberries that grow wild, and we have wild blackberries and even some wild strawberries. So yeah, there's a lot of berries around here, and I know that's one of the theories, is that they eat berries. Yeah, makes sense to me. I think whatever it is omnivorous.
Right. Yeah. I was also wondering the type of trees you have in your area. Do you have like walnuts and hickories and stuff like that? Nut-bearing trees.
Yeah, a lot of those. Again, even on our property, we have walnut trees, and yeah, a lot of those.
Oh man!
Some comments. Let's go.
Makes me feel like you're in Kentucky.
Don't pongids have an offset big toe? They do, but somehow, and pongids also walk quadrupedally as well, using their fists.
Well, the ones we know of,
right? The ones we know of. Like I said, could it have evolved from a pongid?
Yeah.
As far as being careful with your wording, ape, we are apes and primates. We are great apes. Yes, we are. But there has been is it a come from the genus of Homo, or does it come from the pongid genuses, such as Gorilla Barengi, Gigantopithecus blacki, and I don't even know the scientific name for a chimpanzee, but it could come from one of those, and those are what they consider pongid. So, yeah, completely aware that we are a great ape as well, but we are of the genus Homo. Daniel Weeks.
I'm proud to be a great ape.
I'd rather be a grape ape.
Yeah.
Grape ape.
Oh, that crossed my mind.
Grape ape.
You're a victim of Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah. Here comes another question. Do you think Sasquatch is able to walk on all fours? There have been reports where they have gone quadrupedally. Get that little tongue twister there. So, sure, why not? Do I think they can do that? I suppose. There's, like I said, there's been reports of them moving on fours. Using their fist to throw them forward or to move along. So, totally possible.
Hey, I'm starting to do that at my age. I'm walking on all fours more often.
Going up hills when I'm doing some trekking out in the woods.
Chris, don't you even try to say you walk on all fives.
I go on all fours. Oh yeah, I tell you, John Gray and I went up some ridges one time, and I'm telling you, it was. I thought we was going to need a rope. It was steep, but there you go. You just crawl up the hill like an infant. Best you can do.
Yep.
One thing we try not to say here too much is Bigfoot can jump through a portal.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. I don't know.
A crowd's up in arms.
Bring out the torches. Well, there was an investigator of the Kinderhook creature who thought that very thing. And I found him to be a little over the top. His name was Dr. Gary Levine. He was a professor of social sciences from a local college. And he investigated the Kinderhook creature, and his conclusion was that the area where we live, specifically, was a window area onto some other dimension. But he also claimed that Bigfoot creatures have never been seen to ingest food, which is totally wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know where he got that from. So I kind of took what he said with a grain of salt, shall we say.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's
you have to have some basis for what you're saying, and he just had absolutely no evidence for that.
So,
Sean, I hate to speak ill of the dead, but there it is.
Sean, if you're thinking that where he asked the question to Bruce, is Kinderhook a place? Yes, Kinderhook is a town in Columbia County, New York. So if you go over to maps on Google, you can easily find it by just typing in Kinderhook, New York. And there it will be. You'll understand the geography of the area and the general area we're talking about tonight.
Kinderhook is both a place and a state of mind.
That is true. I've been down there.
Yeah.
And check, if you get the Google Maps up, check out that watershed. I mean, they got creeks, they got, of course, the Hudson River, but feeding into the Hudson River is about 5 billion creeks. Well,
and we got porcupines, too.
But there's a lot.
Yes, we do. And we have the best cider donuts in the world.
Yes, that one place there on Route 9 there.
Golden Harvest, I'll advertise them. Yep.
Cider donut. I've never had one.
Absolutely great.
Are they good?
Mm-hmm.
I was a counselor at a group home. The place was called Kinderhof. It was right near Kinderhook.
Never heard of that.
Kinderhof is Dutch for Kinderhouse and Children's House.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, we used to sneak the kids over there and, all right, let's get some cider donuts, guys.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good
stuff.
So Sean, Bruce has already. Go ahead. You can answer that question. This is: do you think Bigfoot is coming from another dimension briefly when it's theirs, or rift, or something along those thoughts?
Well, I can't say that I do. I mean, I can't say for sure it's not that. I will say that I had an experience once that was very bizarre. And Steve, if you read the book, which I think you have, you know what I'm probably going to say. It's controversial, but it happened to me. I didn't have any witnesses, sadly. But anyway, I was driving home from work one day. I worked in Albany at a radio station at the time. And it was kind of a weird night. I think it was in April. And it was one of those nights where, like, frogs were hopping across the road and a black cat crossed my path and everything else. But I decided to go over to what we called Bigfoot Bridge, which is where they found those tracks, the ones that I made casts of, and just sit there for a while, just to see if anything happened. Which was probably a really dumb idea because I wasn't prepared at all. I didn't have a camera. I didn't have even a tape recorder. But I just thought, I'd just like to go over there and see if anything occurs. So I parked my car by the bridge and just, turned out the lights and just sat there quietly for a while. Nothing strange happened. It was a quiet night. So then I decided, okay, I'm gonna leave in about, let's say 90 seconds. So I'm gonna count to like 90 and then I'm gonna go if nothing happens. I got to around, 75 or 80. And I heard from across the road in this small group of trees by the woods what I can only describe as the sound of like very large monkeys talking to each other, like a kind of a garbled, almost like they were trying to speak in a human language. Kind of like those the berry tapes from California. I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yep, Sierra sounds for those who are unsure.
Yeah. Anyway, it took me so much by surprise. I really, really wanted to get out of the car and go across the road and see what it was, but my legs wouldn't quite cooperate because I was all alone. It's a remote spot. But anyway, I finally got the nerve up to go get out of the car. And of course, the moment I did that, the sound stopped. But I walked across the road, and just around the time that the sound stopped, this white light came up out of the trees and went straight up into the sky and just went out as if somebody turned out a light bulb. Just shot right up there. Didn't make a sound, nothing. So I thought, okay, well, I've had enough. I'm going home now. I can't account for that, and I have no explanation.
Well, that's interesting because a few weeks ago, and if you have some time, go back and take a listen to it or watch of it. We had Jay Bachochin on, and he talked about some similar things that have been going on at the Kettle Moraine out in Wisconsin. Of seeing these orb type of lights and stuff like that. Now, I've always said, could it be a gaseous emission? Could it be the effects of infrasound? Could it be, the way your body is handling the stress of what's going on? Maybe. I don't know. There's no straight answer to that question right now. But it's something that needs to be answered.
Yeah, and again, like Charles Ford always said, Charles Ford's philosophy was, I don't know what's going on here. I'm writing these things down. It's up to you to make of them what you will. And that's pretty much the way I feel. I just write down the stuff that happens. I don't necessarily have any explanation for it. But I think it's important to get these things down and documented.
think that's
Then later
great.
on we can figure out what they mean.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So
that is strange. You know, there are reports of these night lights, ghost lights, or gaseous orbs, or people call them jack-o'-lanterns around here. And in that area, there have been Bigfoot sightings. So I don't know. You know, I feel like it's just some sort of a natural phenomena that has to do with
it could be
methane gas. You know.
Yeah, I'm not.
Bruce,
As far as I'm
time to
concerned, the jury is out. You know.
Time to pitch the book one more time, folks. And Sean, I know you're saying great book. It must be a great book. Yes, you can get it. The link is down below in the show description. Link to Amazon and the book. So,
and for everybody listening on the podcast, it's the Kinderhook Creature
and Beyond.
And Beyond by Bruce G. Hallenbeck.
Yeah, and
check out the YouTube channel because you can get the link and go straight to it.
So everybody's.
Well, thank you for the plug, and I really like the artwork too. I think you did a good job of that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, well, Canva works wonders. I use it, and I can move stuff around, and pretty cool,
Nice.
Pretty cool program.
You almost make.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you almost make me look handsome. Well, next to Bigfoot, I'm handsome anyway.
Next to all of us, me and Chris have great faces for radio.
Yeah, Bruce, if you want to look handsome, buddy, all you got to do is just stand next to me. That's all you got to do. Everybody gonna say,
"Oh, stop."
Bruce is handsome.
No. Cut that out.
Oh man.
And Aaron says, "Hey folks, wanted to stop by Viaport yesterday to see Steve, but it just didn't happen yet. They certainly do. But here's the good news, Aaron, is that the event was such a success that they're going to have another one. Not sure when, but they're going to have another one. So it went beyond their expectations. In fact, it's kind of funny when they set that room up yesterday. They had to go back and get more chairs because they didn't expect it to be as crowded as it was. So that just shows the interest in this phenomenon, which is truly, when I see that happen, you know, you always go into these things, a new event. And when you see it, such an enthusiastic crowd that wants to learn and they were like hanging on every word I said. It was just that enthusiasm, people coming up, asking questions, talking about the phenomenon. It just does wonders for the old heart. It's just like, wow, this is a good thing. Where, you know, and being able to spread the good word and you know, people who've been through my lectures know I always preach that if you see a video and there's no story, or the story psychologically does not make sense, then it's probably a garbage video. And to be able to convey that to all these people and give them some examples and talk about other stuff is great. The only downside was yesterday they weren't adequately prepared for a multimedia presentation, so that problem is going to be resolved for my next time there. So,
well, it's good to see that there are people with a healthy interest in the topic of Bigfoot. That's great.
And not just older people, but the young kids as well. So that's the next generation, and that's
And what like Bruce was talking about earlier, after they sent that letter into the editor, you know, and it came out, everybody's like, oh, hey, I saw something like this, or I heard something like this. Everybody starts coming out from their hiding places, you know. And,
I think we only get about 10% of the actual sightings reported. You know what I mean? Because there's so many people who just think, I'm going to talk about this. They'll think I'm nuts. And that's why, you know, when there's somebody who comes out and talks about it, then, oh, well, maybe it's okay to talk about it after all. Okay.
Yeah.
So it kind of snowballs, and you get more and more reports.
You know, that's kind of funny.
That's the way to do it, yeah.
Here's something I'd like to talk to you about, too, is that, you know, over the years, like in the 60s and the 70s, even somewhat the 80s, the media was very interested in the topic of Bigfoot, and it was science that often scoffed at it. Now that we're in the 2020s, and for the most part, since about 2000 or so, it seems like the media kind of scoffs at it now, and the scientists are more receptive to it. Is that been your general experience?
Some of the scientists are. I think, mainstream science is still very reluctant to. But on the other hand, you have people like Jane Goodall, who has come out and said, hey, I don't discount the possibility of this. I don't think these people are all crazy. In my opinion, if it's good enough for Jane Goodall, it's good enough for me.
Right. Yeah.
Now, speaking of videos, as you were earlier, Steve, I've been looking at some videos recently. Do you think there are any recent videos that are for real?
The one from California off the interstate, blurry as it is and as far away as it is, might be something legitimate. I actually ran into another researcher after posting that video and asking people about it. That actually I ran into Tate Hieronymus, and Tate even said that, hey, I spoke to the guy that filmed that, and it seems legit to me, and that his experience that he had was not too far from there, just over the mountain range. So
I don't think I've seen that one. What, does that one have a name, or how do you find it?
It doesn't, but if you go on my channel, it will say Bigfoot near interstate or something similar to that. I have to take a look, but let me. I'd have to kind of finagle some things here. But yeah, so I think if anything is legitimate recently, it would be that one. But is it concrete proof or evidence? Unfortunately, no.
Right.
Trying to see. Yeah, that's it. It's a Bigfoot video. Bigfoot captured along interstate with a question mark, and its release date was February 7th, 2023 is the date I put it out there. So,
I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of videos that don't impress me.
Yeah, it's not a very impressive video, but at least we have a researcher, and a pretty good guy of a researcher. And Tate actually has done a lot of stuff with small town monsters as well.
Yeah,
who actually talked to the guy who videoed that. So, not having a story behind it originally, but now talking to Tate, okay, now we have a story behind it. And there was some semblance because we knew the date and where it was. So that is more than we get than some of these other Bigfoot videos.
Yeah.
So I said, there may be something to this one. Let's put it up there. What do you think? And a lot of people are saying, oh, it's blurry. But yeah, no crapola. Look how far away it is.
Yeah.
But at least it's, and there's traffic going by. And so I had to mute the sound because the traffic was just annoying to listen to as he's trying to film this. But he filmed it, and way it went. And he's talking to whoever the passenger in his car in Spanish, I believe. So
interesting.
So yeah, but I believe it's Southern California that was taken somewhere.
Well, Bruce, I was wanting to ask you. I mean, you mentioned earlier that you had you had a system where you were like feeding them or trying to bait them with stuff. Did you ever try like oranges and apples and stuff?
I can't remember. We probably did. I mean, we tried a lot of different things. But you just reminded me of a sighting that happened. Well, it wasn't so much a sighting, but an incident that happened across the river from here in Greene County back in 1981. Shortly after the PM Magazine show was on, I was contacted by a gentleman who lived in Greene County near Greenville, which is a pretty wooded area in the mountains in the Catskills. And he said that something had been taking this huge container they had of fish. I'm not sure why they had so many fish, but it was like a 300-gallon container of fish. something had carried that container down to the creek in the middle of the night. And he said it weighed a few hundred pounds, and he couldn't figure out how anybody could do that. And I guess a lot of the fish were taken out of it. So he said, could that be a bear? And I said, I have my doubts that a bear would carry it.
Maybe a big cat.
Yeah. Maybe. But
bunch of cats coming.
So I went over there, and I hung out with these people for a while. The guy was a very credible guy. He was actually a chemist for one of the local labs here, because we have a lot of high-tech places over here. So he was not some yokel. I mean, but he felt creeped out by this, and he also said he found some tracks. I didn't actually see the tracks, but he said they were about 18 or 19 inches long. So I hung out there one night, and nothing happened. But apparently, Dr. Levine, the gentleman I was talking about earlier who had the interdimensional theories, went over to talk to them, and after that, they just closed up. They wouldn't talk to anybody because they thought he was a fruitcake.
Right.
So,
it's funny. I investigated a bunch of sightings a family was having very close to the Cotterskill Creek in Catskill. And one of the most impressive things is they had a 5-year-old girl there. And I talked to the maybe she was 4. She was very young. And she told me about the monkey that she saw out the window of her house in the yard. And that was really a cool, wow, out of the mouths of babes. You can't, they're not going to sit there and say, oh, we're trying to do this. Let me just lie to them.
Well, that reminds me of what Paul Bartholomew told me a few years ago. There was a Chinese restaurant in Whitehall, and the owners were straight from China. They didn't know anything much about the U.S. And he was talking to them one day, and they said, "We didn't know you had monkeys here." And they said they had seen a huge monkey, I think in the water, it seems to me, is what he said. I don't remember the exact detail. But you probably are familiar with the story, Steve?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. In fact, I just heard the story from Paul back during the Whitehall Sasquatch Festival. We were sitting around talking about that at dinner time.
Yeah. And I thought that was a fascinating story because these were people who really had no cultural reference as far as, Bigfoot is concerned.
Which, Bruce, just so you know, and I'd love to see you up there, is they've announced the date for the Whitehall Sasquatch Festival this year. It's September 30th.
Okay.
So if you can make it up, I'd love to.
Yeah. Paul has invited me several times. I haven't been able to make it yet, but it's on my wish list.
So if you show up this year, I can go, Paul, see, I invited him and he showed up.
Well, yeah, there you go. You have bragging rights then, yes.
I may have to send an Uber down to pick Bruce up.
That'd be great.
But yeah,
that's on my wish list. I'm definitely going to be doing that. Yeah.
Okay, there was one other question up here.
Yeah, I'm trying to find.
I got it.
Oh.
What are your thoughts on AI art and how big of a problem is it going to be for hoaxing, or CGI maybe is what you're thinking of? And not really. Let's face it. We always said there was a problem with the Bigfoot peeper to begin with. No matter, when I say this is Kaiju, is that, okay, you have a picture, but remember a picture is just the skin of the story, right? That is the skin of it. You need to get to the skeleton to see what it's made of, the bones. And the bones is the story. So again, if it's phony, that story is going to fall apart pretty quick. And that's the way I see that. Look at the Bigfoot peeper. That was CGI. And the story, the bones, the skeleton of it, just crumbled upon examination. So, Okay, Raptor Crazy with a question. Bruce, when you're out and about, how many cameras do you put out there, and are they by waterways or and actual trackways?
Well, as I'm only one guy, I don't have money for a lot of cameras. I have a film camera, which I have taken out in the woods with me, and I also have a video camera, and of course my phone, my iPhone. So, I just carry them with me when I walk in the woods, but we don't have anything actually set up.
Necessarily use trail cams or nothing. I don't.
Right.
I don't
right.
either. Around here, they get stolen.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the issues. Yeah. And the weather is another issue, but yeah. I mean, it seems to me, whenever you have a camera, these things don't show up, and when you don't have a camera, that's when they show up. It's like they know. I'm not sure how that works, but it seems that way sometimes. I mean, I'm a monster hunter who's never seen a monster, and I think that's fairly common, actually.
Yeah. And it should be. The monster hunters that see monsters every time they go out and hunt for one, you have to question their credibility.
Yeah, you do. Yep. Yeah, that's right. Chris, I assume you've had sightings too, right, Chris?
Yeah, I've had a few. Yeah, well, back in 2010.
Yeah. And
really,
that was in Kentucky?
Dried up after that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I had several in Kentucky.
It's kind of funny, though. I mean, we go through our spurts. Like, I had a sighting and a sighting within a year of one another. And that was it. It was dry before, and it was dry afterwards. So I consider myself lucky, and that's the way the flow should be.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned 2010 through 2013 as being a peak time. For me, it was 1980 through 1983, another 3-year period. I wonder why that would be. Any theories on that, or
1980 we had activity around the house in Kentucky.
I think they're moving to where a specific food source may be. If you recall that the big flap in Whitehall happened in the 70s there, 75, 76.
76.
Kind of died off in 77, and at the time there were apple orchards on the north side of Route 4.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden in 2000, I want to say 2006, there was another flap of sightings on the south side of Route 4 in Whitehall, along, I believe, Reynolds Road, or I forget the exact name of the road, but it was on the south side. The apple orchards have pretty much dried up on the north side, but there's an apple orchard on the south side of Route 4 now that's very big. So
now, interesting that you mentioned apple orchards, because Kinderhook is known for its apples. I mean, people come from all over the place to get Kinderhook apples. And several sightings in the 80s occurred in or near the orchards. So they're, sounds like they're into healthy eating, I guess.
Speaking of Dutchess County, I remember years ago there being some sightings in Plattekill. And Plattekill is rich in apple orchards as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's one of the things I believe they're really into is apples.
Yeah. Yep.
I believe.
Very interesting.
That's why
them.
That's why putting an orange out for a Sasquatch,
especially
in New York, I'm like, what the hell is this thing? They're going to take it and throw it at the house.
Maybe the skunk ape might like it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Back in 2010, when I was leaving some bait, things for them, maybe try to see what they would like, what they would take if they would, and I was talking back and forth to Steve about this because we share research, and I was telling him, I said, look, man, I said, I thought the biggest thing that they would go for would be something like an orange, because, I'd been around a lot of chimpanzees in New Mexico at the research center, not in the wild, and they absolutely loved oranges, man. I mean, if you give them a segment of orange, they're your best friend for life. And I thought, these Bigfoot would be the same way. Well, no, they wouldn't touch it. I had seen tracks around it, fresh tracks. I knew they had been there, but they didn't touch it. If they touched it, they put it right back in the same spot. No interest whatsoever in citrus fruit.
And Blue Ridge Bigfoot makes a good point too. Says bananas don't work either. True.
Yeah.
If you're not fed them on a regular basis or forced to eat them like a chimpanzee would be.
Yep.
Like for example, Jane Goodall baited the chimpanzees with apples, but that was a thing like here. And I'm sure she had to show to eat one, kind of eat one and show. And here's the other interesting thing that I found out actually writing my second book, What Would Sasquatch Do, was that, the chimpanzees liked the fermented apples better than they did the fresh ones because they would rot a little bit and they would get an alcohol content into them. So they would get a buzz off the apples that were rotting. And so that's what they would go to first. Well, here's the interesting thing. How many times do we hear a story of a Bigfoot smelling kind of musky or musk-like? Right? So the chemical that breaks down an apple into alcohol is called ethol. And ethol in its raw form smells musky. So to me, does a Sasquatch that may smell musky to somebody is, how we eat a lot of onions or a lot of garlic and we tend to sweat that out of our pores?
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering if a Sasquatch that has a rich apple diet is sweating out this ethol, and that's where we're smelling. So
sounds
just
plausible.
Just a thought to that.
I always assumed it was because they didn't bathe properly, but what do I know?
Well, the one I smell, it's kind of funny when I got the Fort Ann cast. We heard it walking around us, and we got hit with that smell, bang. And that didn't smell like something that was sweating out ethol. That smelled like dude, you need a bath. And it was skunky, musky, death-like, and just as quick as it was there, it was gone.
Yeah, that was
the same night Bill Brand heard the moan of it too, because Bill Brand was up at the car because his eyesight wasn't great even back then, and he had heard some sort of moaning, like say he heard him like something. And then we found the cast, and we found the track, I should say.
There was one time down here in Kinderhook that it seemed like the woods smelled like it was full of dead animals, just for a few minutes, and then it went away. It was weird.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I could say. It smelled. The most prevalent one was the smell of death, but there was a little skunky in there, a little musky. But that was probably one nearby. I won't. If you ask me as a researcher, what I would say, if a researcher asked me, hey, I smell, I'd say probably one was nearby there then.
Yeah.
Because that's what they smell like, death. I mean, it's the closest thing. And I was a paramedic for 8 years, so I've been in the houses where people have been dead for a few days, and they're calling us and saying, hey, I know what death smells like, and that's close, not quite, because it does have some unique qualities to it that make it separate from just a death smell. But the major component is, the first thing it reminds you of.
Yeah, I think they can have different smells. I've smelled wet dog times 10, okay, and then rotting, dead carcass meat, and then number 3, no odor. So I think they can smell different ways.
Yeah, that definitely smells
weird.
Yeah.
So, well, guess what time it is, Chris?
No.
Look how quick this show goes by when we have a great guest. So it is 10:53, so we got to start wrapping the show up.
We used to do 1 hour, and it was like, that went by pretty quick.
Too quick.
And 2 hours it started being, I was like, I don't know, it's a little slow. Maybe we should cut it off at an hour and a half. But this seems like we've just been on here for an hour. This has really been a quick show.
Yeah, people, like the 2-hour format. That's what we used to get with the 1-hour format. Oh, come on. and then, Chris used to yell, well, I think 2 hours is too much, but look how quick it goes by. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just flies by. When we get a guest like Bruce, it just...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, time flies when you're having fun, that's all.
Sure is. So, anything new coming up on the horizons for you, Bruce?
Well, as far as, Sasquatch goes, I hope so. I'd love to actually get a good look at one. That's on my bucket list, basically, just to get a good look at a Sasquatch for my own satisfaction. But I have some books coming out, but they're nothing to do with Sasquatch. I have a book about Mel Brooks that's coming out in the next year to celebrate the 50th anniversary of both Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. So that's my film book hat that I wear sometimes. And I know I've always got stuff cooking. I've got a film that I've been working on for years that looks like it's finally going to get distributed. Feature film.
Cool.
I've also made a number of films that you can see on Tubi and other streaming channels.
My favorite Mel Brooks movie is one that you would never think.
Yeah.
And it's the remake of To Be or Not to Be.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about that.
I love that one.
Yeah, I think it's very underrated, yeah. It's actually better than the original version in a lot of ways. Yeah.
You're a better Zelensky than Zelensky.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I was just reading Mel Brooks' biography, and what an amazing guy. He's 96 years old now, and he's still hanging in there.
Kicking. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, a lot of fans of Blazing Saddles in the chat. Me too.
Oh, yes.
That is a movie they couldn't have made it today. They wouldn't have.
Probably
made it
not.
today.
Probably. And Mel Brooks has said that. Yeah.
When we lose the snow, I would love to come down, visit with you, go through some of the sites, do a little filming, put it up on the channel if you don't mind. I'd love to do that. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, that'd be great.
And maybe we'll find some food to clog our arteries a bit more.
That'd be good too.
Yeah. That's right. Everybody's asking about Spaceballs too, but the exciting thing is History of the World Part 2 is coming out soon.
Oh yes.
So that has got me excited. I'm like, yes.
Looking forward to that myself.
I just feel cheated they don't have Hitler on ice. Remember that's what they have.
Yeah. He loves his Hitler jokes, doesn't he?
Oh yeah.
I owe myself.
Yeah.
Is this England?
Oh
my goodness.
That's a pretty good Mel Brooks impression.
Oh, that was the producers, wasn't it?
No, that was To Be or Not to Be.
No, the producers was Springtime for Hitler.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, Chris, have you ever seen To Be or Not to Be?
I don't think so.
You got to watch that one. It is great Mel Brooks stuff.
If I have, it's been several years. It's time to watch it again because I can't remember.
But anyway, Bruce, I'll let Chris do his thing, and then I'll close out the show. So, Chris, go do your thing. It's 10:57.
Well, I want to thank Bruce for being on with us tonight. We appreciated having you. It was an honor having you. You're a great guest. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank everybody in chat. We appreciate everybody, all our listeners. You guys make the show. I mean, we're tickled to death and honored to have you. If it's first time listening on the podcast or on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, smash it. Come on, smash it. Get that thumbs up. We need that. That helps the algorithm. But you guys listen to the podcast. Come on, stop by SquatchDTV.com.
And remember, sharing is caring.
That's right.
Oh, I love this thing. Okay, folks. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for being on tonight. You're truly one of my heroes. And I have a few in the Bigfoot field, but you were one of them. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me.
And folks, we will be back next week, next Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, we're setting up a pretty interesting show. A couple of researchers that had some experiences in Connecticut, and they'll have some audio as well for us. So should be a good time. I'm going to confirm a couple of things this week, but we got at least one on the two on board. I'm hoping to get the other one on board as well real soon. So, folks, again, we'll see you next Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Of course, we want everybody to have a happy, safe, healthy week. Who knows what's going to come on the channel this week? You never know. I have a feeling that we're going to have a stinker of a video coming up real soon. There's a little hint in there. You know what I'm talking about, Chris? You don't. But anyway, we may have a stinker of a video coming up, and some other interesting stuff that we always do. And we want to wish everybody a happy, safe, healthy week. Please stay safe, folks. Watch out. For me, upstate peeps, we got more snow coming, so stay safe. God bless, and of course, keep on squatching. We'll see you all next week, Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll give it.
Hey folks, you've been watching Squatch-D TV. Join us each week, Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for the latest on the Bigfoot mystery. As always, we thank you for being our loyal viewers and encourage all to subscribe to our YouTube page at youtube.com/Steve Kulls. As always, have a great week. Stay safe. God bless and keep on squatching.